this episode, I'll give a bit of a wrap-up of the Australian Aviation Summit Day, plus the awards night. Coomalie Creek Flying commemorates VJ Day, Pacific Airshow, and wet season seminar announcement. Plus, I'll talk about some of my pet hates for the year of 2026. All that and more coming right up. So strap in and let's get into it.
Gunbrow, good morning, 7614, 95 Mallow, 7 PAB with altitude.
Coordinating, Halo, I'm running bank, power, bank pressure rolling at 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there.
Stand by, star 9000, 1013, K 525.
G'day everyone. It is episode 208 of the Flight Training Australia podcast. The podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. G'day, I'm your host Trent Robinson. Thank you for joining me. Sorry for a short break again. Keep telling you I'm not going to do that, don't I? But, you know, life is getting in the way. But it's all for good things, so I'm not going to complain. And like I said, I only want to put something out if I've got something to say that's worthwhile. And I'll certainly try and uphold that today. But, yeah, look, it had plenty going on regardless. As I think I left you there, the Australian Aviation Awards were on. I headed off solo this time to Sydney and caught up with a heap of people and met some new ones, which is fantastic. It's what these events, I guess, irrespective of anything else, are best for, and that is networking and meeting people who you may have contacted digitally or spoken to on the phone, but first time meeting in person. And I certainly got the opportunity to follow up on some opportunities and talk to some people there and get some more intel to share with you all at some point. But yeah, interesting. The summit wasn't too bad. I think last one was better. What does frustrate me, I guess, is the lack of GA content in these things. And it's not that because I'm predominantly in GA, it's that GA almost doesn't exist in some of these talks. And the fact that we are so fundamentally crucial to airlines, to the whole aviation industry, we might not be making the billions of dollars and making the headlines, but GA is where pilots are trained, where pilots are groomed and developed and get their experience before moving into the airlines in this country, and plus all the private flying and the things like air shows and stuff. We need a bigger voice. I think it's a bit frustrating to hear a lot of the discussions and comments, and this wasn't just from myself, but from several others that were there as well. A good percentage of the room was from a GA industry background, and I think that's really where I would encourage Australian Aviation magazine and the seminar and everything to really look at this area and make sure that it's talked about and included, because we are struggling. We are having more costs put on us than probably ever before, and I talked about that a couple of episodes, so I'm not going to go back into that. Yeah, look, anyway, it was good to meet people and have a chat. Yeah, the awards night, yours truly was not so lucky this time, but that's okay. It was a bit unfortunate that all three of my categories were in the first of the three segments. So my name got mentioned a few times and no luck, but I was made the joke of Mark Humphries, the MC for the night, thinking I needed a bit of help to, what do I have to do to win? But no, it was quite funny. But I love going there and celebrating everyone's achievements. And it was certainly great to meet other people there. And again, some other networking opportunities as well, which is quite exciting. And I'll talk about those later on if they eventuate. But congratulations to everybody who won an award and was recognised. Everyone who became a finalist, well done. And keep doing what you're doing, because we need more of you out there. So what happened then? I got home and pretty much straight into trying to get my car ready to head down to Coomalie Creek. So Coomalie Creek has a fly-in every year and it's fairly low key as far as advertising and that sort of thing goes, but it's a great day of just commemorating the time of the end of World War II, VJ Day or Victory Japan Day. And the DC-3 wasn't flying this year, but we still fired her up, gave her a bit of a clean, and took her for a taxi and some run-ups, made a bit of noise. But plenty of others flying in this year. It was really great to see. And as always, we chucked the swags out to the side of the aeroplane, and had a great night camping under the stars. Just an absolutely stunning evening. And waking up to some more flying and all that. They had a band on that night, and the music was fantastic. It was just a great gathering of people and celebrating aviation and everything that we love to do up here on the top end. So mark that one down in your calendar. It's every VJ Day around the nearest weekend, and love to have you down. The Pacific Airshow is just finished again. And, look, great crowds. I watched the Sydney squad guys stream, met them over in Sydney at the awards night as well. And it was fantastic to see their streaming going on off the balcony, filming everything and the antics throughout the day. And, congratulations to everyone who participated. My good mate Jeremy Miller, he was there in his Yak 55 there doing that unreal inverted entry into the box. Well done, mate. Plus, as is true Jeremy style, pulling the canopy back and giving the crowd a big wave. He loves the crowd. It fires him up and loves putting on a show there. So well done, mate. Great show. And to Emma McDonald and Rod Flockhart and his extra there. It's just so great to see so many local acts doing their thing. And Matt Hall and the guys doing their formation display there, formation arrows, and those things can turn tight and just stunning, accurate flying. It was just so good to watch. Not having done anything remotely that close, but I have done quite a bit of formation flying and formation aerobatics, and I have a reasonable enough appreciation of what is involved to put an aeroplane where you want it and keep it there. It takes a lot of nerve and dedication, commitment and training, and absolutely sticking to the plan there. And that was, I really, really appreciated what they put on there. It was a fantastic display. So hopefully everyone enjoyed it. I believe they've renewed through to at least 2028. And if you went and saw it, what did you think? Was it worthwhile going? And would you go again? All right, but we've certainly had our fair share of jets. The F-15s are here with the Singapore Air Force at the moment. They've hung around after pitch black. So it's a little bit more jet noise to go, but just about all wrapped up. And it was good. I popped into Tyndall on Friday. Haven't been down to Catherine for a little while, but Tyndall's the Air Force base just down there. It's about an hour and a half flight down, or not quite, but down to Tyndall there. And they've just finished all the runway works and everything else. And the massive new hangar complex for the Triton, which is the big drone that's operated there, flown out of Adelaide, or controlled out of Adelaide, flown out of Tyndall, pretty crazy. So the big 9 squadron hangar there. So Tyndall is certainly having a lot of development and still plenty going on. There's a heap of airport works going on at Darwin as well. A lot of military investment happening, so very interesting to see. The clouds are starting to show. That's one thing I noticed the other day, and seeing a few other videos being posted of a little bit of weather starting to show up around the place. It's still early days. Build up and wet season typically doesn't start until October, but hey, anything's possible. We are expecting a decent wet this year still, but a bit of a drawn-out build-up process. But to talk about that more, I will be running the wet season seminar this year. Casa and I sort of have a bit of an agreement that we'll do alternate years. And October the 14th, Wednesday night, and should be about 6 o'clock for a 6:30 start, is when the wet season seminar will be. So I won't go into any more details just yet, but mark it in your diary if you're here in Darwin. If you're not, fear not. I will record the whole thing and get it up on Instagram. and sorry, not Instagram, YouTube. I'll put some of it on Instagram, but in smaller doses. But yeah, it'll be on there, and I've got some really great ideas and to make it as useful and helpful and interactive as possible for you all. So a little bit different to the one I did last time. Obviously, there's no point just regurgitating the same thing, but hopefully you'll enjoy that. So information on where tickets are going to be available and all that sort of stuff will be coming out in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, it was an absolute sellout last time, and I expect the same thing this year. It will be a slightly smaller room, unfortunately, because they're doing renovations in the normal massive room that we have. So I've asked them to put in as many seats as possible to make sure that everyone who wants to attend can. So yeah, if you can't make it, please don't buy a ticket, because you might be robbing someone else of a spot. But anyway, October the 14th, Wednesday evening. Mark it in your diaries, and more info coming soon. All right, so the pet hates. I haven't done one of these for a little while, but there's been a few things in the last couple of months that just keep happening. And I thought, all right, maybe it's time to have a bit of a chat about some of these things and to point it out. Now, there's so much detail. Each one of these I could probably spend a whole 20, 30-minute episode talking about, because there's actually quite potentially a whole heap of factors that contribute to these. But let's see how we go, and try and keep it as relevant and helpful as possible. Because again, I sort of say pet hates, but what I really say is, come on guys, these are so easy to fix, and it's costing you money, it's causing you grief and stress, and potentially costing you jobs. So let's get it sorted. Instructors, pay attention, because most of this is happening on your watch and allowing to continue on as well. So let's all work together here and nip some of these in the bud. So rounding out too high, too early and too high. This one drives me mad, because basically once the aeroplane is rounded out too high, everything that follows becomes an attempt to fix the original error. So the pilot starts to round out, sees the runway just be below the nose, keeps increasing the attitude, holding off, parachuting the aircraft onto the runway, all the energy's washing off, and they're usually ending up still a metre or two off the runway and running out and going whack. Yep, some of you nodding, going, yep, we've all been there, done that. Maybe recently, hopefully not. All right, so there's a real distinction here between the round out and the hold off. Now, whether we call it round out, flare, whatever, hold off, develop, all these terms, I don't want to get into whether an aeroplane flares, rounds out, or what, okay? Some people say only airliners flare. I don't care. We all know what we're talking about. The round out isn't meant to be one big pitch change that just sort of magically goes from a nose down to the runway to up. It's a transitional process. All right, but when to start that transition is the key. People are starting it at a couple of 100 feet, and you can see it happening. They've got their aiming point on the runway. The runway's just getting bigger in the windscreen, and all of a sudden the nose starts to trend up. The airspeed starts to slowly wash off, and that is not what we want at all. All right, so really, really important that we start this process at the right time. Too early, and we end up in a big parachute approach. If you watch a bird coming into land, it starts quite early and it fans out its wings and like a parachute sort of does, and washes all the lift off, and then the birds get it right. Usually they touch down beautifully. But students are flaring or rounding out at a height too high, and they're not being taught and shown the appropriate perspective, the aiming point, the aspect, the airspeed, the rate of closure, the rate of descent, training that peripheral vision. Peripheral vision's a big one, and well and truly ingrained in me from all the tailwheel and now float flying that I do. Not that I'm doing a lot of float flying at the moment, but certainly with all the tailwheel flying. But it's the same skill of knowing where the edge of the runway is, be it a 45, 60 meter wide runway or a 15 meter one. All right. That peripheral vision, looking ahead, but also seeing what's going on out the sides as well to help you with that depth and judging that perspective. So important. And that aircraft attitude. One of the things I show pilots whenever we go out in the 210 for the first time is when we line up on the runway, have a look at the gap between the end of the runway and the nose. That is your straight and level attitude. So when we come into land, if we see that, we're going to do a 3-point landing. Anything bigger, we're going to land on the nose wheel first. So we need to reduce that gap. But one thing that can contribute to this is the student not sitting, or the pilot, not sitting at the right height in the aeroplane. If they're too low, half of this is all because they go blind, they can't see, and this leads to other landing problems. All right. But rounding out too high, got to keep the nose down, keep the power on, fly it down lower to the runway. All right. If you do these parachute approaches, you wash off speed, it leaves you vulnerable to wind shear, to tree interference, which is basically wind shear as well, but loss of lift. So keep an eye on that one, guys, and make sure that you keep it down lower to the runway and then transition into the hold, fly level, and then we will try and solve the next problem, which is number 2, using power to cushion the landing after holding off too high. Now, I see this all the time, and this is one that plagues pilots right the way through into flying twins and everything else as well. Constantly leaving a trickle of power on. And when I question a pilot why they're doing it, it's to try and cushion the landing. I said, well, if you're having to do that, that's because you did the landing wrong. All right. If you leave power on in the hold instead of just pulling it off completely, you're doing it wrong. Now, let's think about things here. If we do a stabilized approach, we're coming in at a set airspeed. That airspeed is nominated because it's a nice buffer from the stall speed with full flap or whatever you're doing. Flapless doesn't matter. Okay. The idea of once we reach the flight level part of the hold off and developing that hold off is to lose airspeed. And as we do, raise the nose a little bit, increase the angle of attack. That increases drag, which in turn loses a bit more speed. We raise the nose to increase lift, also increases drag, so on and so forth, until we basically dissipate that little 15, 20, whatever the knot buffer is off the stall until the aeroplane settles onto the runway nicely. So all we want to be doing is falling from a foot or two off the runway. All right, not a meter, not 3 meters, not anything more. If we're having to put power in, it's because we're too high. If we're leaving power on because you're coming in too slow, too high, again, it's the approach that's all wrong. So we need to get that fixed. Power comes in to save the landing, but that's a last resort thing. If you're doing that all the time, it's mitigating an error that you've already made. All right. So naturally there are times where having a bit of power on the landing is required. All right. But I'm talking about the routine compensation of poor height judgment during hold off. All right. So if you're there, few feet too high, running out of energy and adding some power at every landing to soften it, you haven't fixed the landing technique. You just developed another technique to disguise the original problem. So fix the reason the aircraft's dropping in rather than trying to use another input to cover it up. And instructors, this is where you guys come in as well, because it is something that's plaguing people right through into turboprops. All right. And then when you get into big 3-4 blade propellers, they start to disc. And if you don't know what that means, effectively might as well just see the propellers as one big disc or one big plate, one dish. It completely creates drag and you feel it. And that will plonk you on the runway very, very quickly. All right. Start flying a caravan. Bring the power back too far on final. Caravan pilots know about disking as well as many other turboprops, including the King Air and the Conquest. So just be careful of that. All right. Number 3. This one featured last time and it's still here. leveling off from a climb, and immediately reducing power. Still on the list, right? You're climbing. I'll just use the 210 as an example, but it applies to everything. You're climbing at 90 knots or so, reach the cruise altitude, lower the nose forward, and pull the power back straight away to your cruise power setting. And then you wonder why it takes so long for the aircraft to accelerate. What happens as the aeroplane accelerates? We increase lift. We're going too fast for the trim, so the nose pitches up and we gain altitude. So on and so forth. All right, people, it is so simple. It's taught in one of our first lessons. And instructors, you need to stop rushing this lesson when you feel like you've got nothing to do or talk about and let the student fly. And right the way through to PPL, commercial training, height maintenance is still constantly an issue because I see this happen time and time again. Attitude, lower it. Speed, allow it to increase. Then power, then trim. Attitude, speed, power, trim. It's a very simple mnemonic that you can learn and apply to every aeroplane you will fly. You fly bigger aeroplanes, the longer they take to accelerate and level off. Don't rush it. Okay? Don't bring the power back straight away because now you're going to be 30, 40, 50 knots too slow and it's just going to plague you and distract you whilst you're trying to do other things like your top of climb checks, your en route checks, clear offs, all that sort of stuff. All right. So again, another example where pilots can perform the sequence correctly because someone taught them the procedure correctly. Right? But you've got to understand the energy management behind it as to why we're doing things. So a lot of what, not much why. So let's do that. All right, the final one before we wrap up is leaning of mixture. Now, I literally had someone the other day and they asked me to show them how to lean. Now, this is a commercial pilot. And I said, well, how did you get taught at flight school? And they said, we just wound the mixture back a bit till it ran rough and then wind it back in a couple more goes. And I just laughed and thought, yep, okay, that old chestnut. Now, that can be a technique in aeroplanes that don't have things like an EGT or exhaust gas temperature gauge. All right, so our original 172s, 152s, not that we leaned them 152s very often, but the 172s, we would lean, wind the mixture back slowly until the mixture or the engine ran rough, and then wound it in a couple of winds. Now, what is that actually doing? Well, again, like I said, a whole episode I could do on this, and Rich and lean to peak and all that, but another time. And I think that needs to be a YouTube video because the leaning graph is fairly important to that and a bit hard to describe sometimes. But it's probably the one that's just annoying me the most because leaning engines is such a simple process. Remember when we're leaning the mixture, we're reducing fuel from an engine. What is the fuel doing? Well, it's burning and it's doing that, but it also, funnily enough, whilst it burns hot, it also adds cooling. So it causes the temperatures to increase, to peak, and that's where we get to our chemically correct mixture, or our CCM. And from that point, we're talking about metal and everything else heating up and cooling up, so it doesn't happen straight away. So if you grab the mixture and just go wind, rough, wind back in the other way, a couple of goes, that's just the most random mixture point anyway. Who knows what you're meant to be? Usually around 50 degrees reach a peak, 50 to 75 depending on the aeroplane you're flying. But you're on just some random spot now. You could be too rich, too lean. Now, if you're too rich, it's not going to hurt the engine. You're just going to burn more fuel. But if you're too lean, this leads towards detonation, cylinder problems, glaze cylinders, and engine damage, or certainly not the prolonged life that it could have had. All right, so it needs to be done and taught properly. So even if you don't have any instruments whatsoever, it needs to be done slowly. Just a wind, give it a few seconds before the next one. Not just winding until something happens and the engine runs rough. If you've got an EGT gauge, well, then you can see the temperature change and give it a wind or two. It's fine to give it a few winds to start with, get the ball rolling. All right. If you've got the yellow needle on there, another question I ask people is what that yellow needle is, and they tell me that's the peak. And I go, well, not necessarily. It was the peak for the last person, but you don't know what altitude they were, what power setting they were using. All right. So that needle adjusts so that you can set it where your peak is for today. All right. And then enriching it 50 degrees richer peak, or you can go leaner peak for some engines, but you need to know what you're doing and you need to be accurate. If you're not accurate, you're going to do more damage than good. And like I said, that's another discussion. So understand what the mixture control is actually doing. What is it actually controlling? Why is the fuel to air relationship, why is that changing with altitude? And another one I get, which I guess is tagged into this, but en route power settings. Okay, what's maximum throttle height? Usually around 4,500 feet, 5,000 feet, you're going to get full throttle in a CSU engine. All right, so manifold pressure is now maxed and it starts to reduce. And by the time we level off at 8, 9, 10,000 feet, we're probably back to 21 inches, maybe maximum 20. Right? And I've got people trying to set 23, 24 in the cruise. That's just not going to happen. All right. In every POH, there are cruise tables. And in the cruise tables for the higher altitudes, it will give you combinations of manifold pressure and RPM and resultant fuel flows. And that's what we should be setting. And that's what should be leaning towards. So in the CPL test form, it's talking about, and in the training and in the mods, it talks about setting range and endurance, different power settings for different results. This should be in the training. So why people are getting up here to Darwin and jobs and everything else without this knowledge baffles me. All right, so make sure that you're covering this. This is such an easy thing to just work through for 20 minutes in the cruise somewhere, going through some power settings, pulling out the POH, comparing it to what you're actually getting if you've got a fuel computer, and again, all different aircraft with different kit outs. But having a look at that peak, having a look at what the EGT is doing, talking about monitoring cylinder head temperatures and manufacturer procedures on how to lean the engine. It's all there. Pull it out if you don't know. Really, really important. So everything worth discussing is what we need to teach with regards to leaning, with regards to leveling off from a climb, when to flare, when to hold off, and appropriate landing techniques. So we're not teaching mitigating techniques to fix the problems. Let's teach how to do it properly the first time. All right, so there's a connection between every one of these, and they're not catastrophic errors. Most of the time, the airplane will tolerate them just perfectly well, and that's maybe why they are surviving in training. Student rounds out too high, they add a bit of power, landing's okay. The pilot levels off, reduces power immediately, and the airplane eventually accelerates, levels off, gains a bit of height, but they're all good. Someone leans the engine, it gets a bit rough, put the mixture back in a bit more, it keeps going, everyone moves on. But if we're training pilots to become genuinely competent aviators, then the standard can't just simply be, did it work, then it must be all right then. It should be, do you understand what you're doing? Do you understand why you're doing that? All right. So let's start teaching more of the why and fix these problems right away so that they're not being left unaddressed and plaguing pilots well into their careers. All right, everyone, that's it for now. Thank you for listening to me ramble on. But instructors, does that help you? Pilots, are you having some of these issues yourself? Employers, are you guys seeing this? Let me know. Give me the feedback. Pass it along. Like I said, I'm working on this employment episode very, very shortly with some of the. This is part of that, as well as the Create Better Pilots program in addressing some of these things as well. So I would love your feedback and stories. Some of you have emailed me and messaged me, which is fantastic. Thank you. And thank you for leaving some reviews. Remember, you can Like and subscribe to all the episodes, whether you listen to Spotify or Apple or whatever else. Leave a 5-star review. You can leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. This helps keep the podcast turning over, makes it look relevant to the algorithms and all that sort of stuff. So by leaving a review, really, really helps me, guys. So thank you for everyone who's taken the time to do that. And of course, jump on my socials as well, Instagram, Facebook, a little bit of TikTok there, and of course YouTube, with some more stuff coming out over the coming weeks. All right, guys, that is it for now. Thank you so much. And thank you to all my Patreon supporters. Until next time, blue skies, and remember the golden rule: aviate, navigate, communicate. Cheers, everyone.